So thank you everybody for joining in again in our second session, which continues to be Cities and Smart Urbanisms, Localizing Technology and Governance Part 2. We have with us the chair, Dr. Solomon Benjamin, who would chair the session. And we have two presenters, Joydeep Dey, followed by Arunima Ghoshal. So approximately you will have 15 minutes each to present and followed by a 20-minute discussion and comments by the chair. So let me first introduce the chair. Solomon Benjamin is an associate professor at the Humanities and Social Science Department of IIT Madras, where he teaches courses on urban studies and qualitative research methodology. His PhD has been from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, USA, in the Department of Urban Studies and Planning, where he looked at the industrial history of East Delhi's Shahadra, framed around the concept of neighborhood as factory. He did his master's in architecture also at MIT and looked at refugee housing transformations of central Delhi's Bhogal. Solly was earlier a faculty at University of Toronto's Political Science Department and a fellow at Göttingen's Lichtenberg College and a faculty at Bangalore-based National Institute of Advanced Studies. His concept, Occupancy Urbanisms, has shaped several academic debates in urban studies and is summarized in the 2019 Wiley Encyclopedia for Urban Studies. He's part of the International Critical Geographical Association and has been on the editorial board of Antipode. Solly is presently anchoring a collaborative multi-authored book manuscript named Cities Untold, Negotiating Spatial Practices and Imaginations, both in English and Mandarin, that places text and photographics in epistemic equivalence. His other co-authored works include various aspects of land bureaucracy, constituting state spaces for shelter and economy. An earlier research, he looked at coastal South India's urbans as multi-layered processes shaped by ideas of sacred territory. Prior to a full-time academic career, Solly anchored an independent research group around several issues between 1998 to 2003 on environmental planning in coastal South India's Udupi and Mangalore, contesting a large ADP loan, designing a small town economic development program in Kolkata metro region, and researching in the controversial Bhumi land title digitization program in Karnataka. In the mid to late 80s, Solly was part of the Kalpavish and was also involved in the national campaign for housing rights. He has engaged with critical art practice, collaborated with RAGS media collectives, City as Studio, earlier with the Delhi-based CSDS Sarai program. And he paints, does some minor carpentry, ceramics, and bakes lovely bread. Thank you, Solly, for joining in us and agreeing to sharing the session. Over to you, Solly.
Thank you very much. That was quite a long introduction. Hope it doesn't distract. Well, this is really a pleasure to be here, and I'm very interested in both the presentations and also in a sense of continuing this conversations around the kind of boundaries of what we see as being digital. And so I'm looking forward to a lot of conversations, and thank you very much, Aparajita, for involving me in this, and thank you again. So as I understand, we have 15 minutes each presenter, and that should hopefully leave time for discussion. And yeah, so maybe we can start off, and I'll mute myself, and I may have to mute my camera just to make sure we have enough bandwidth, because after all, we are in Bangalore, and that's a city of great divides. So thank you.
So I think the first presentation is of Joydeep. So Joydeep, would you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sure. So Joydeep, yeah, you'd like to share your screen? And
yeah,
thank you.
Is it visible now?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yes, make it full screen.
Yes, I have made it. Isn't it coming in full screen?
Not yet. Not yet.
Actually, I have made it in my laptop.
Yeah, if each of us just choose the view options right on top of the screen, you can choose yourself the full screen. It works quite well. Thank you.
Is it okay now, sir?
Yeah, you can go ahead. I'm able to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Urbanization is at present taking an alarming rate, and it is expected to reach 70% mark globally in the coming 2 or 3 decades. Considering this, we can easily assume that the toughest challenge for the urban administrators are to govern the cities in a good and smart manner. At the same time, with the advancement of science, information and communication technology has entered almost in each and every aspect of our life. Particularly during the COVID-19 phase, all of us became accustomed accessing different kinds of services from our bedrooms, from our doorstep. So this kind of technology has an important role to play in the context of urban governance also. Considering this, my today's presentation is on digital technologies for smart urban governance, a study of the urban local bodies of Kolkata Metropolitan Area, India. Just a minute, actually I am having a problem in changing the slide. It is not changing properly. Yeah, now it's working. So the first and foremost thing that may arise in your mind that why I am talking about digital governance. Digital governance is also known as e-governance or electronic governance. It is basically a set of electronically managed activities to ensure good governance of any, and success ultimately depends upon the application of different kinds of ICT, that is information and communication technology driven tools. And globally, it is well appreciated for its smartness, moral responsiveness, and transparency. And in case of municipal governance, these ICT-driven technologies have a huge impact to make the entire system transparent, accountable, and cost-effective. And on that note, my objectives are to observe the scenario of municipal digital governance in developed and developing countries, to formulate a new set of indices to evaluate municipal digital governance, to find out the present status of municipal digital governance in the urban local bodies of Kolkata Metropolitan Area, and to demarcate the differences that exist in the level of digital governance offered by the municipalities and municipal bodies of Kolkata Metropolitan Area and that of the developed world. So I'm moving directly to the next section, that is the review of quotas. For this study, as I have already mentioned, that review of more than 60 web portals of cities.
Joydeep, we are not able to see the slide moving. We are still seeing your first slide.
Actually, I am at present in the 5th slide. It is,
okay.
Actually, there might be some problem.
Technical.
So, just a minute, sir.
Yes, now I think we moved to, now we can see your slide. What you say, review highlights.
Is it review highlights?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. I am so sorry. So review of more than 60 web portals lead to a sample selection of 20 urban local bodies for my entire study. And due to scarcity of time, I am presenting here just 5 ideal situations where this kind of digital technologies have been successfully utilized for the benefits of the citizens. My next slide is the case of City of London. Is it visible, sir?
No, it's stuck on review highlights. Yeah, this is fine.
But every time I have to move to end the slideshow and then next time start. I am starting the slides. I don't understand why this is happening. So, City of London is presently providing some sort of e-services like ease of business related services, ports, online library resources, waste recycling facilities, animal welfare, environmental health, etc. And they are following the United Nations e-government index. They are at present lying in the 7th position. And this is there. I have taken a snapshot that how their website is looking forward to incorporate the opinions of different groups of people living in the City of London. Next, it is the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. Since all of us are quite aware that Japan is highly susceptible to different kinds of disasters and hazards. So Tokyo Metropolitan Government have taken some important initiatives to build disaster resilience. Therefore, they are also focusing on better standard of living, technology, action plan, business suitability, transportation, city band values, etc. And Japan is lying in the 14th position at present. So is this visible now, Tokyo Metropolitan Government?
No, we're still on London. So
I am...
Yeah.
So I am closing this slideshow view. I'm just moving next slide. Okay, that will be fine, I think.
Yes, that's a better idea.
Okay. After Tokyo, it is Washington City. Washington City is also working on sports information related, indoor plays, animal welfare, environmental well-being, interactive map gallery development, etc. And since that part is not visible, I am not going to repeat all that things or note down everything. I am just presenting the things which are at present visible to you. After Tokyo, after Washington, it is Johannesburg. Although South Africa do not possess any higher rank in the global e-government index, but I have selected Johannesburg because in spite of being a developing country, Johannesburg is at present lying in the 78th position of the global e-government index, but they are focusing on some sort of unique services like social justice, ensuring social justice, ensuring human rights, developing community volunteer-based activities, etc. In the next stage, I will discuss why these kind of initiatives are important to understand in Indian context. And after that, it is Seoul municipal government. It is the last but not the least of my sample cities. Seoul has been chosen due to two main reasons. Number one, over the year, they are maintaining quite a good rank in the global e-government index. At present, they are in the 7th position in the e-government index. And the most important thing is that long back in the year 1999, Seoul has introduced an online system that is commonly known as Online Procedure Enhancement for Civil Application, which is commonly known as OPEN. And this was the very fast recognized, well-recognized initiative taken by any urban local body to ensure anti-corruption mechanism in the municipal governance through application of ICT-based technologies. So given that I am in the next phase, moving to the identification of the municipal e-governance of Kolkata metropolitan area. So before going into the details, it is important to know that so far Government of India has taken 3 major initiatives to promote e-governance in Indian cities. Firstly, National E-Governance Plan of 2006, Digital India Initiative of 2015, and then Smart City Mission of 2015. And since I have already mentioned that I would like to form some indices to evaluate the present day municipal governance, here I have formulated Institutional E-Governance Index, participatory e-governance index, social e-governance index, financial e-governance index, and environmental e-governance index. And their ultimate accumulation leads to citizen-centric e-governance index that identifies the citizen-centrism of the existing system of digital governance in the various urban local bodies. For this study, the data used are basically qualitative in nature and has been selected from the digital service delivery interface, that is the website, web portals, and different social media platforms used by the municipal bodies. And since the information has been collected in qualitative way, they have been converted into quantitative one for the sake of development of indices through different kinds of coding methods. And from the point of methodology or the criterion that has been selected for ranking the cities or ranking the urban local bodies, this is the most important slide. For that reason, I am just sharing my full screen so that it can be better visible to you. This slide shows the 5 and 6 different index and their attributes or constituting attributes, and here 4 under institutional aspect, 5 each under social and financial aspect, 1 under participatory aspect, and 7 under participatory aspect, and 1 under environmental aspect. And in the next slide, this is the study area map of Kolkata metropolitan area. And Kolkata metropolitan area is presently composed of a number of urban local bodies, 40, and of which 4 are municipal corporations and the rest of the municipalities. So in the next slide, I am moving to the index-based observation of my study. Before going into the details, I would like to mention one thing, that for all the index, I have conducted this study for 3 consecutive years, 2017, 2019, and 2021. Initially, in 2017, when I have formulated this index and ranked these countries, my initial focus was to identify the hidden status of municipal e-governance. But in the subsequent year, in 2019 and 2021, when I have longitudinally studied the same, my focus was not only to identify the present day condition, rather the dynamicism, the positive changes that are taking place over the time. So you can find that in case of institutional e-governance, the average performance almost remained the same over the period of 2017 to 2021. But in 2019, it has decreased a bit. But still, Kolkata Municipal Corporation, Howrah, Barasat, Mudumgram, Panihati, Barakpur, they are the few important urban local bodies which are performing better than the rest of the urban local bodies I'm mentioning here. In the next phase, participatory e-governance index. Participatory e-governance mainly deals with the people's participation in the mechanism of municipal governance, and here you can find that the average performance has decreased because I have not found any kind of changes, any kind of positive changes or dynamic attitudes over the time. And here also similar kind of scenarios are observed. In the third phase, I am moving to the social e-governance index. Social e-governance index is perhaps the most important one in the context of human life and their well-being, because it deals with education, health, death and birth registration, and other kind of social welfare activities. And I'm quite afraid that over the time, the performance graph has not improved at all. Rather, initially in 2017, Kolkata was in very high category, which has decreased to moderate category in 2021. There are some other municipalities like Domdom, Bidhannagar, Kamarhati, Panihati, Uttarpara, and Barakpur also performing better than rest of the municipal bodies. In the next, financial e-governance index. Financial e-governance is perhaps the single most aspect which has been addressed properly by all the municipal bodies, not only in Kolkata metropolitan area. Rather, I am continuing this study over sample cities of India. There also, I have found a similar scenario, because this ultimately deals with the financial aspect, that means revenue earning, that are very much important to pay the salary of the employees, to maintain the regular developmental, basic minimum developmental needs. That's why the number of ULBs in very high category are increasing over the period. And at present, although the performance of individual municipality has fallen a bit, but still, the number of municipal bodies, Bidhannagor, Howrah, Panihati, Boranagar, Uttarpara Kotrang, Barashat, Hubli Chinsura, Kollani, Kachrapara, Barakpur, they are performing, and a lot of municipal bodies are performing very well. They have introduced new mechanisms over the, and still continuing to introduce new mechanisms in their daily affairs. Next, it is the environmental e-governance. Although there are growing concern regarding the ill effect of urban development on the environment, but this map shows that the municipal bodies are not at all aware. Only Kolkata and Panihati is lying in the moderate condition, and the rest are performing very poorly. And summing to sum up the entire scenario, it is the citizen-centric e-governance index, and the average performance remained overall same over the period of time. Although performance of Kolkata may not be dynamic enough over the last period, last 4 years under my study, still Kolkata, Howrah and Panihati is performing better than the rest of the municipal bodies. Given that, in the next phase, I am moving to the identification of drawbacks of existing system of municipal e-governance in Kolkata metropolitan area. At first, I have identified the challenges. The challenges that are identified in case of Kolkata metropolitan area is that the ULBs of Kolkata metropolitan area are mostly focusing on maintaining their daily administrative function. That's why they are focusing on municipal maps, display of information, death and birth registration, collection of tax, provision of licensing, lodging, complaints, and some sort of basic services. But if you look at the global scenario, then you can find they are focusing on interactive map gallery, online library resources, ease of business, human welfare, human rights. These kinds of some modern day services they are offering through their digital mediums. And this has been replicated, the Indian scenario has been replicated in the table below. It shows the Indian ranking in the Global E-Government Index. Initially, in 2003, when United Nations has started ranking the countries on the basis of e-readiness, India's position was somehow better till 2005. But since 2008, United Nations has started ranking the countries on the basis of actual level of e-governance, and India has started performing or deteriorating its rank. And at present, India is lying in 100th position. So the major obstacles that exist are lack of awareness, poor e-literacy, poor e-readiness, lack of general will, lack of political will. And the most important thing is that in many instances, the common man and most importantly, the bureaucrats are not aware about the lack of consciousness about the ill consequences of non-adaptability of this new technologies. I am not talking about changing the existing mode of governance. Rather, I am suggesting for an alternative mediums which can go hand on hand with the offline mediums, so that we can make the entire system sustainable and pro-citizen. Since there was two main things in my study. Number one is to develop a new set of indices, and the second one is to evaluate the performance of the municipal bodies. I have also developed here SWOC analysis. I have made it. Strength includes incorporation of all the various stakeholders of municipal governance. Weakness include, though I perceive their equal participation, but it is very hard to find in reality, particularly in developing countries. Opportunity include promotion of citizen-centric e-governance, and challenge may arise from inconsistency in data and information provided by the Quotas. So to conclude, I can say that the major challenges or the major focuses that should be given on access to accurate and real-time information, increasing citizen awareness level, and system strengthening and backup strength development. The important aspect here, one thing I would like to mention is digital divide. I was also conducting perception survey, face-to-face perception survey on digital divide. But one thing I have noticed that in many instances, the people who are the sufferer of digital divides, like elderly people, likely the poor people, or the backward marginalized people, in many instances, when some unknown people tend to force some kind of new technologies or new application upon them, they are reluctant to access them or reluctant to access the changes. But if we can increase the community level voluntary approach where the local boys and girls, particularly the students, can be involved in that mechanism so that they can make people aware about the new changes or convince them about the new technologies and their benefits. In many instances, this kind of familiar boys and girls or the familiar volunteers or the people from the community, from the locality or from the relatives may make people much more aware than any third person or any unknown person. This is my first suggestion. And the second suggestion is regarding the inadequacy of funding and non-illiterate population I have already addressed. So inadequacy of funding omnipresent in every developing country. So we can look forward for academic collaboration with research institutes, colleges, collaboration with universities. Because if municipal bodies are looking forward to involve any multinational companies for technical support, then they would charge a huge money. But if they could make a collaboration with any kind of academic institutes, they would not even charge a single money, or they would just charge a money for the new technological applications and tools and techniques. They would not try to make any profit out of them. So we can think of this kind of municipal body and academic organization collaborations. And the third thing is that in many instances, I have already mentioned that municipal administrators are unwilling to involve people in the governance mechanism because of political constraints. In many areas, the political parties or the bureaucrats are not willing to involve everyone or the people from opposition in the fear that they may oppose their plans or their initiatives, or they may involving them may not be easier for them to pass their planning, quote unquote, pass their planning or pre-perceived ideas. So these are the problems.
Joydeep, since we're over time, if you can thank you.
So if we could address all these things, I hope that in near future we can address all that things so that we can make the entire system of urban governance sustainable for the future. Thank you. Thanks for your patience hearing.
Thank you. We'll now have maybe should we have the next Aparajita? Should we have the next presenter and then we take the Q&A?
Yeah, I think we should have the next presenter and then.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So,
Arunima.
Yeah.
I'm just sharing the screen.
Yeah. Thank you.
You could let me know if it's visible. Is it visible?
Yeah, it is visible, Arunima.
Maybe change to the next slide so that we know that the slides are moving. Yeah, that's fine. You can start on recover. Yeah.
All right. So I'll just then begin. Thank you so much, ma'am and Kiran sir and Shah sir for having me here. And I'm delighted to see all the old faces again through this platform. So I'll just quickly move on to my presentation. This is, let me just move this. This is, as you can see, titled Provincialized Forms of Smart Urban Transformations in Bhubaneshwar, India. It is my presentation today is basically part of a larger project that was done by Professor Ola Soderstrom from University of Neuchâtel and Professor Oyana Dotto from University College London, named Provincializing the Global Urban Age in India and South Africa, where we took 3 case studies from India and 3 case studies from South Africa to understand the local mutations and provincialized forms of smart urbanism that is coming out. So my presentation today is basically part of the work in progress, and I intend to provide a large overview of the case study of Bhubaneshwar as a whole, because we're still working through the data and we will be focusing on different parts of analysis. So I would love your comments and feedback on anything that you think may be a good way to move forward through these thought processes. So the outline of my presentation today is basically to showcase my presentation. I think we can situate it in the intersections of post-colonial urbanism, digital citizenship, and notions of smart aspirations with and how imaginaries of the smart urban future is in the Indian urban context. So in order to talk about all these theoretical notions in practice, I will be laying out some of the examples of the various smart materialities that one can see across Bhubaneshwar, what this experience of smartness can be within the city, some of the common pitfalls as to what worked, what didn't work, so many of which have overlaps with what Joydeep has presented as well as, and I'll speak more about that as I come to those slides. And these are common issues in the Indian urban challenges anyway. And then I will focus on one particular smart city project in Bhubaneshwar called the Socially Smart Bhubaneshwar, which kind of enabled us to rethink and reevaluate how we want to look at the term smart. So at all times, generally speaking, the term smart is used synonymously with digital in many ways, especially when we look at it in terms of policy documents, policy implications in conferences of bureaucrats, etc. So the notion is always about using ICT to help make urban challenges more efficient and using digital means in order to do so. But is that all it is? And all of this within, and I'll be speaking about all of this within the analytical lens of scale, wherein the positionality of Bhubaneshwar as a tier 1 city in India rather than tier 2, sorry, I think, rather than a larger metropolitan city like Kolkata or Delhi. What does that do when we come to smart implementation? So as I was saying, I will be talking about materialities, governance, and aspiration, like aspects of these. I will only be touching upon all of them to speak about how we can look at, we can talk about being aware of a knowledge base and gaining a more realistic understanding of what it means to be smarter. So looking at alternative routes of smart urbanism. I will also be talking about how post-colonial, the historical, material, and social inequalities that have been perpetuated through colonial and post-colonial legacies seem to be reinforced through many smart urban developmental programs. And in all of this, I also bring in the aspect of the need to look at social sustainability as an important part within this smart rhetoric in order to make it work at all, and in order to bring in marginalized communities into the discussion regarding smart urbanism. So some of the key questions that I look at through this presentation is to see whether smartness can be limited to this corporate vision of modernity through efficiency and control of disorder using ICT, especially in the context of cities such as Indian cities. Then what happens when long-term visions, local contexts are not really addressed through the smart planning that is going on currently in these and also how peripheral communities, and here I use Kadira's sense of peripheral. I do not mean peripheral communities in terms of geographically being peripheral to the city, but communities that are outside the logics and frameworks of official state policies. How are they being represented in these smart imaginaries? So this is to just give you a basic sense of two things. One is a quick overview of Bhubaneshwar as a city. It is the capital of Orissa. Orissa is the fourth least urbanized state in India, but Bhubaneshwar is one of the most rapidly urbanizing cities in the country. And Bhubaneshwar that we know of today is an administrative capital that was planned and developed by a German planner in 1954 as the administrative capital of the state. And it has been, and even since that time, it has been historically separated from the older identity of Bhubaneshwar that resides within this blue circle, that is Old Town Bhubaneshwar area, which houses the Lingaraj temple complex. It's an extremely important Hindu religious site and has been so for centuries. The red bounded area here in the map shows the new part of Bhubaneshwar, which is physically separated from Old Town Bhubaneshwar by a railway line. And that red bounded area is the place where all the smart city area development, area-based development is occurring. So the reason why I'm showing this is, one, to give you more perspective of the historical evolution of Bhubaneshwar, and second is how even during the post-colonial planning by the German planner, it was made certain that Old Town Bhubaneshwar is physically separate from this modern idea of what the modern Bhubaneshwar as the administrative capital of independent India should be. And this same disjuncture between the old and new is kind of being reinforced again through the smart city development planning, because again, that old town area is left out from this planning the planning discussions. There are multiple reasons for it, which came out through our discussions with officers in the smart city Bhubaneshwar, but I can speak more on that if anybody is interested. But it just kind of shows a pattern of how we are looking at smart as again a new form of modern part, which is not really speaking to the historical socio-spatial interactions that has and the evolution that has been happening in the city. So now I will very quickly take you through some of the visuals of how Bhubaneshwar is going in mobility of basic infrastructures of roads and inaccessibility of encroachment of spaces by vendors, etc. So these are some very, I will just skip through these and I can speak about it more, but these are just what you would see when you come across Janpat area, which is in the central part of the city, which sees the most funding. It has historically seen much more investment in this area since independence. So most of these are like a lot of funding has gone into making sure that the control center is built, and technologies being basic technologies being put in place. Then there are things like water ATMs, e-toilets, and 2 application-based transport forms like the MoBus and the MoCycles. The way that the Old Town Temple area has been in conversation of becoming smart has been through the aestheticization by sanitizing areas around the Lingaraj Temple area, taking down some of the older pictures, as you can see, is on the left, which used to be like these shops all around the temple area, which are now being removed. And mostly when I say smart Bhubaneshwar, and if you want to experience it through materialities, it is a very fragmented form. So when you say you are walking through the old town Lingaraj temple area, and the only smart thing, as we call it, you would come across is, say, suddenly a water ATM, irrespective of whether the people then know how to use it or not. But if you, and say you are walking across this modern cosmopolitan look of smart Janpath road, and you want to utilize the materiality of an information kiosk, but it really doesn't work. And yet, and hence again, in this hyper local format, there's a disjuncture in the way we are experiencing smart urbanism. There are issues like motorcycle initiative not really working, and the cycles are rotting away in the scrapyard because of multiple reasons, such as the extreme environmental conditions, low digital literacy rates, so which means people don't really know how to access these cycles and to use them. So in looking at all of this, and I'm putting a few in quotations from our interviews to make it but I won't really speak about them due to lack of time right now. What I'll speak to is how through our case study, we found out that, okay, what is this? Why is it not working? Why are these smart infrastructures that the Indian government, the national and local and state, that are trying to put into place in, say, a city like Bhubaneshwar, why is it not working? And these speak to many of the things that Joydeep was talking about. There are these disengaged departments. There is frequent change in leadership at the administrative level. There is also some basic things that are very specific to tier 1, tier 2 cities are the lack of technical expertise and lack of funding in local governance, which is required to make these smart implementations work within the time frame that the national government has set forward. And then there are multiple parastatal departments. None of them are really speaking to each other. The lack of technical expertise is sometimes looked at as not really that important because now multinational agencies are coming in, but they are bringing in outside perspectives and outside experts. They're not really speaking to the locals in order to see how this smart urban transformation can be done. Then there are issues, again, like Joydeep was mentioning, of political negotiations. Like we had conversations with some officers who said that, okay, Orissa is of the BJD state and this is a BJP program. And there was this constant negotiation that the people who were implementing the smart city had to do in order to make sure that the political optics of the smart city doesn't get in the way of whose idea it is and who is bringing in development, etc. And a very big issue in these cities, such as Bhubaneshwar, is also that of land ownership, land and occupied lands. And herein I bring in the context that Bhubaneshwar has a very large slum population of almost 40% of its total population lives in slums. So now how does Bhubaneshwar's government, local government, then address the fact that, okay, it has such a huge population? What does it mean to become smart for this? Because there are so many challenges and obstacles to becoming smart in the way it has been envisioned at the national level. So what they did differently, I would argue, in terms, and it may be something that other smaller cities are following now. I just don't know of that yet, but Bhubaneshwar was the first winner of the first national competition for smart city proposals. So they began like this. What the government did was they accepted, yes, we have a large slum population and we need to integrate them into the smart rhetoric at least. So they started by doing infrastructural things like social housing and reaching out to the slum communities to build some basic infrastructures, etc. But what changed for them was the coming in of a civil society organization named Hamara Bachpan Trust, which started working with the Bhubaneshwar Smart City office, and started working with youth and adolescents from slum communities to make something called the Smart Bhubaneshwar project, a socially smart Bhubaneshwar project. This is a people-centric project wherein they are training these youth to become leaders of their communities. They are trained in doing participatory workshops, advocacy meetings, and have become the point of contact between these marginalized communities as a whole with the local urban governance. And they have been very effective in bringing attention and regarding getting some basic infrastructures done, like public toilets, building of parks, cleaning up streets, lighting of streets, increasing education for women and children in those areas. So there are multiple things that came across through our conversations with them as to how this is working. And what it did is, this socially smart Bhubaneshwar is the least budgeted project of Smart Bhubaneshwar, but it has over time gained the optics to become the most popular and the most successful one. So being part of, and they use this phrase, smart peer leaders, all across within the official narrative and the identity of becoming Smart Bhubaneshwar. Throughout all this, the notion of digital technology and the use of data through digital mediums is not present. And here are just some more visuals of when we were speaking with the smart peer leaders and attending their training programs, and they speak about their notion of what it means to be smart, what it means to be part of a smart city, and their aspirations. And herein I would like to bring in the two very poignant quotes. One is by a female smart peer leader who talks about how there has been a very visible change as the leadership of the local governance has become aware that, okay, when a smart peer leader is contacting them, they need to respond, and they respond to these peer leaders and engage with them in terms of the problems that the communities are facing. And another one is how another peer leader says that smart city, in my opinion, is not technology, but the people's mindset that makes a city smart. If people do not understand why the government is building something in the name of making smart cities, then a smart city will be built, but not maintained. So this very simply
if you could wrap up in a few minutes, because
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm already over time. Yeah, okay, I'll just make it quick. Sorry. So through this poignant quote, we can talk about some of the basic things that we are trying to see through this case study. We are trying to talk about this particular moment of transformation that is providing an affordance of access and negotiation of peripheral communities with the urban local bodies and extending some sort of agency in the making of smart cities. And it brings us to at least forcing us to think about how social sustainability is important to be included in this way that we are looking at the future of smart city, especially in the Indian post-colonial context. And this is what I talk about in these slides. So essentially what we have seen through Bhubaneshwar's case study is that the smart city program is generally being used as a trope to build on developing basic infrastructures in big cities. This trope has the capacity to subsume a large number of other already existing initiatives that were there, making it a very dynamic policy in our understanding. It has also provided a moment of affordance, creating some agency for these minority communities to accessing local government institutions. It is reaffirming the notions of what it means to be part of the city through smart aspirations by these particular, by the marginalized communities. And it has also managed to bring Bhubaneshwar into the national conversation about urban development again through the smart city development. So this is essentially what it is. I think I've already spoken about what I wanted to conclude, that through this, we are trying to talk about add to alternative routes of understanding smart urbanism and looking at the local mutations to understand what it means to be smart in the Indian post-colonial urban context.
Yeah,
That,
thank you very much. I'm afraid, because we need to have time for questions and answers. Yeah, so I think maybe if people can raise their hands and directly just unmute yourself. I'm just trying to see whether are there any hands raised immediately. And also you can put your question in the chat box. Yeah. Okay, maybe till people warm up. I have two questions, two sets of questions to both the presenters. I think the first one on the Kolkata metro area. My question is, whether are we seeing? In fact, this is relevant to both. But in this whole notion of smartness and this kind of, it has a kind of underlying anxiety to it. And whether that's kind of connected to a sense that there's a kind of there's a crisis in the city. I mean, the first presenter started off with an urbanization kind of rate that was posed as a crisis. And is there sort of a fear of the city, or the fear that one is not able to understand it, it's out of control? And where is that fear coming from? And is it something of, you also talked about, both of you kind of talked about city politics as being the, impediment to any kind of smart measures. So is then the question is whether any of these smart measures are a kind of an anti-politics machine, right? And is then what is being sought out is a kind of a, city. I'm purposely being a bit provocative, because I found, at least maybe it's very old, the Calcutta metro, the Kolkata metro towns were very alive in terms of their politics, and they were very different. So Kamarhati was very different from Chandanagar. It was very different from Bali next to Howrah. So in a sense, the question is whether, in this whole narrative of smartness, what really is the politics of it? And finally, the question to all of us, and I hope there'll be some questions, hands raised, is that are we as academicians also being implicated in this notion of smartness and depoliticization? Because if you look at it, you have the mayor and council system in the Kolkata area. In Bhubaneshwar, you have overlaid land records, land management genealogies from the central provinces, from the new town by Otto Königsberger, by other kind of, genealogies of land, and people have built, spaces around that. So what does it mean to say that when we have 40% slums, are we actually kind of in these official categories erasing out, some of these other histories? So, and are we as academicians also involved in this project? So how do we locate ourselves in this smartness, So these are some of the immediate points that came to my mind, and I hope that we can start to address these and other things. But yeah, so please raise your hand, or, you can just unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question. Thank you. I don't know if Aparjita, you also want to add any questions? I mean,
I think I would let the presenters, Arunima and Joydeep take up the questions, and
yes,
and other participants to raise questions.
Yeah, if both the presenters can even reflect a little bit on their own process of doing this research, what were their own crises of what you faced, as you encounter a smart city? What were questions posed to you? Like, we are always looking at what we pose questions, but what are people asking you, in the process? So, yeah, and let's start a conversation. I think that would be nice. So would the presenters like to respond, and then we'll take in more people?
Yes, sir. I would like to mention one thing.
Yeah, please.
Because I have already mentioned that I was conducting primary survey. So during that perception survey, many people have asked me that what will happen. The municipal authorities will not hear to our voice, or they will not address our issues, or in some many instances, while they are expressing their views against the political parties or their decisions. So they are in fear that if I somehow my opinions are replicated in any public documents, or if my name is reflected to them, they may harm us. Or for one example, I can say that while I was talking about ward committee, we all know that 74th Amendment of Indian Constitution ensures formation of ward committee, but in most of the instances, these ward committees are nothing but a committee formed of the some right hand and left hand of the ward councillors. And the opposition parties, the people having opposite views or having any kind of technical expertise for ward level activities, you may have need educational expertise, health expertise, PWD expertise, environmentalist, but they are not even involved in the decision making process, or not in the 5 years tenure of any municipal body or municipal administration. They, in most of the cases, they have not even asked a single question to that kind of experts. So they have expressed their views that they are afraid of the system, and they no more they are willing to express their views, as this will not yield any kind of better results. So this took a long time to convince them that my research work may somehow help them, or somehow in long run may help to make the city smart and sustainable.
Yeah, thank you. How about Anurima? Would you like to respond to some? Yeah, sure.
Yes, I mean, thank you for raising such interesting questions. And I mean, there's so much to talk about. There's just not really that much time. Some of the things that I would like to respond to first is, you asked about the notion of anxiety being associated with that of smartness and smart cities, and this fear of urban challenges. To me, I think it goes about in terms of who we are looking at, who are the stakeholders we are looking at when we take this question. So this anxiety, whether it is being put into the minds by policymakers, by private and public, with this nexus of the network of public-private that is coming in to solve urban challenges. Are they the ones who are putting together this anxiety within the minds of of the citizens? This entire notion of how this aesthetics of smart is also very much driven by the elite and the middle class notions or imaginaries of what the city should be. And here in the erasure of slum of histories through this land ownership of slums, etc., comes in very vividly. And this notion, this slums is a very big problem in Bhubaneshwar itself. It is a huge part of the urban history of the city. So when we say slums, we come back to those questions of the right to the city, and whether whether they need to be sanitized, removed. And there is this entire thing that the Bhubaneshwar government is doing through the Jaga mission, where they want to provide all the basic infrastructures, some basic identifying infrastructures to the slums, which will remove them from the official tag of being slums. Whether that actually then continues to provide them with basic services that is accessible to other parts of the other citizens, we don't know yet. That is something we need to see. So one is that. The second is, yes, the city politics and this is a huge problem that is coming in terms of implementing any urban policy in a good way has been that of the city politics, this disjuncture between the state, national, and the city governance, like the decentralization of what was needed is not really, the opposite of that is happening. It seemed so, at least during our field work there. And as there, so I'm just
deadline
talking about and as an academician right now, I would also want to mention that we did large part of our fieldwork during COVID, and it was impeded a lot. Like we couldn't really go into the in-depth of how we wanted to look at it. But as me, as an academician positioning myself, I am at the point of questioning everything. So this socially smart Bhubaneshwar is, I'm not saying is a solution or a pathway that everyone can follow or should follow. But I am at this point only identifying a moment of transformation and what this moment is providing, say, to a marginalized community in terms of accessing certain decision-making process in the urban challenges of the city. Maybe if that makes sense.
I think we have two people raising hands. Rishika, if you want to.
Sure, just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, so nice to see you all, and thank you, ma'am, for organizing this. The question is for Arunima, and I think it's stemming from what Salman Benjamin sir was saying. Thanks for the presentation, first of all. My question is that you have mentioned the smart peers have expressed that there's a need for smart mindset. There needs to be the mindset needs to be inculcated. So are they convinced that these technologies and governance and infrastructural initiatives, they are the markers of smartness, or is there a pushback or critique in the way these smart cities initiatives have made them kind of unsmart as a slum dweller? So are they pushing back the notion of smartness itself? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for that question, because it kind of shows that I really couldn't be, that is where I was getting at the end of my presentation, and I just couldn't due to bad timing. But it is exactly that they are constantly taking this notion of smart, removing it from the concept of technology, because digital empowerment is not in there. The digital literacy is not great yet. Yes, the youths they have their smartphones, but access to internet and access to using it in the ways like even being part of the citizen consultations of these smart city development programs, that wasn't really there for them. They did it door to door. They didn't use Facebook platforms and WhatsApp to inform the government that this is where citizen consultation is happening. So yeah, what they are doing is they are taking the term smart, giving it a new meaning in terms of mindset in being, and using it to make their case that we want to be part of this smart city, but without the technology aspect, but using it instead in terms of participatory decision making, in gaining access and agency to the urban local bodies, and hence becoming part of the city by having their voice heard. That is how it is at this point.
So then we are then questioning the whole depoliticized smartness of urbanism in Indian cities, I mean, because they are trying to assert their agency in local governance. So there is a politics of representation, or, you know, whatever we want to call it. Thank you.
That is how it was, at least when we were last in field. I'm not sure how it is going on right now.
We have another question. I think it's from Swapna. Would you like to just unmute yourself and pose your question? What? Yeah, go ahead. Or the presenters can even read the question. It's saying, "Our smart city planning is climate resistant considering the future climate projection?" So focusing on the climate change part of it. I may just add a little bit to that question. Does the smart city planning pose a particular framing of climate change and resilience, which might be different from how you all might be finding when you're researching the city? Okay, so it's somewhat similar, a bit of a twist on that. Thank you.
Would Joydeep like to go first?
Yes, it should be there. While we are talking about smart cities, every aspect of our urban life should be included there. And that's why I have, in my presentation, I have shown that how Japan and Seoul is working on the climatic condition, disaster preparedness, disaster resilience building. These are also part regarding to our growing concern about the environment and the climate changes that might take place. So in case of India, India is in very preliminary stage of smart city development, although it has been 7 years past, the government has launched the smart city mission. We are not really in a position to think about this kind of advanced features or advanced kind of thinking. Rather, we are in a basic condition, but obviously to make a city completely oriented towards the development and towards the benefits of the citizen, it should include the smart climate monitoring system, its resilience building, and response against any kind of hazards and disasters.
Yeah, and if I can add, in terms of Bhubaneshwar, yes, they have, the smart city officials have planned along with the multinational companies that are building all these smart infrastructures. They are doing things like keeping a tab on environmental conditions. Like they are putting in technological and infrastructural basis. They are building a disaster resilient command center also. And we have to realize that Bhubaneshwar is very prone to cyclones and urban flooding at this point of time. It has become a very big problem. And even in 2017, when the command center was just built, it played a huge role in terms of responding to the Fani cyclone that happened. But it seems at this point, a lot of it is in terms of giving response and not preparedness. That is what it seems. And to add to what Solomon Benjamin just asked, this smart city planning as climate resilient, it is very much in the discussions, but again, it is discussing in terms of technological and infrastructural. It is not yet talking about how to make it, at least in the document analysis that we did, it isn't yet talking about other forms of sustainability, like social sustainability and building the capacity of the citizens to respond to climate, to making the city climate resilient.
Thank you very much. Sorry to sort of cut you off almost mid-sentence, but I've just been told that we'll have to wrap up. And I'm sure that for many of these other questions, we can contact each other by email. So thank you all. And yeah, it was a good set of presentations.
Thank you very much, Sali, for chairing the session, and the two presenters, Joydeep and Arunima, for presenting such fantastic work. And I think we had, the earlier session was also on smart cities, which was a viewpoint from the ministry actually, and very interesting panel. So I think what both the sessions really put forth is this engagement with the idea of smartness, and from a certain post-colonial perspective of what does smartness really mean for Indians here, so to speak. And I think there, when we talk about what kind of meaning that smartness carries, we are looking at technology to be used as a strategy for development. Okay, and I think Solly very rightly points out is that there is a certain anxiety around technology. Now, this anxiety around technology, I think, stems from, from all the stakeholders with regards to who controls and owns this technology. Because at one hand, the state is very anxious as the technology not being in their hands. On the other hand, the people down there thinks that they are losing their agency because the technology doesn't seem to be in their hands, maybe in private hands, in the larger neoliberal hands, looking for profit making. And I think somewhere you can read that in Joydeep's statement where he says, you know, from private hands, if it moves to universities, then there is, it sort of cut shorts this kind of a thing. And it's very reflective of how we're looking at actually technology and the relationship that we have with technology here. So I think both the sessions have been very interesting and very enlightening. Thank you so much. We are already ready in for the next session, which we're looking forward to a keynote address from Professor Rob Kitchen, who's already here. So thank you once again. I'll just cut short this now for this, cut short in the sense I'll stop the session here now. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining in.